Hello, I'm Kyle, and I am here to review the second episode of Halo, the TV series. I really liked the first episode of Halo, and it's funny because as I watched this episode, I feel like I like this episode more, but at the same time, I had some more criticisms with this episode. So I'll get my criticisms out of the way first. First off, I think one of the main issues I have with this show so far is that I don't feel like it brings anything new to the table in regards to science fiction storytelling, science fiction television. It is kind of riding off of the back of The Mandalorian. And I'm not too familiar with the production of this series. I don't know when this series was put into production, but it really feels, especially in this episode, that this show is starting to be just the dollar store version of The Mandalorian. But the dollar store version of The Mandalorian with just as high of a budget, I'd say, as The Mandalorian. Because the budget of this show, or at least how they utilize the budget, looks amazing. Because all the special effects in the show I really like. But I'm not really feeling so far the whole masked, armored hero taking care of a child with a group of other masked heroes, other things, and government type forces going after said child, and that armored hero with child going across the galaxy. I don't know, it feels too much like The Mandalorian. Now, the ending of this episode, I won't go into spoilers, but the ending of this episode kind of strays away from that. So I think that we have to wait and see how the series progresses before we can really judge if it is similar to The Mandalorian or not, and if it is maybe just copying it. Because right now, I want more from this story. I want to see more of the UNSC. I want to see more of just the Covenant and the aliens in this show. I want to see more of like the lore of this series, and I'm hoping that in the future episodes we will get that. Now, I will say that another criticism I have of this series, especially this episode, is I'm a little unsure of how to feel about their portrayal of Master Chief. Mainly the fact that in this episode, he has his helmet on, I would say, for about 2 minutes. And that's about it. And then we also fall into the issue of The Mandalorian, whether it's too similar. But the thing about Master Chief is that we are so used to seeing his helmet, and his helmet's a key element of like the design of the character. So when we don't see him without the helmet on, it sometimes doesn't feel like Halo, if that makes any sense. And I hope that he has his helmet on more as the series progresses. And I'm really hoping that they take some criticism for this, and it would make them implicate him wearing the helmet more in a second season. Because as much as I love Pablo Schreiber in this role, and I really do love his performance as Master Chief, even without the helmet on, it just, I don't know, I feel a little bit detached from, you know, it being Halo when I don't see Master Chief's helmet on. And especially when you have such a great suit, it's a shame that we don't get to see more of it. But then again, this is only the second episode, so maybe they will fix this as the show progresses. So those really, so I would say that my two criticisms are that I kind of want to see a little bit more of the story and make it feel a little less than just the Mandalorian dollar store version. And I want to see a little bit more of Master Chief with his helmet on. Aside from that, I really like this episode in terms of establishing some more characters. I really liked the Covenant human character that's living amongst the Covenant. I guess she was adopted by the prophets. I think this adds an interesting perspective to the story of Halo that we haven't seen before. I've read that the Covenant in the Halo lore doesn't really, feel like humans are, part of their civilization. They should all be rooted out. So having a human goes against their ideologies. But then again, this is a separate timeline, so I don't know if I would criticize that. Another thing is I really do like how we have this character known as Soren. Soren is the character that's introduced in this episode. And Soren is basically a ex-Spartan. He used to be a Spartan, and then he left being a Spartan, and now he's living with the family. Very similar to like other tropes of the hero having to see the old pal of his that, is going to help him through the times, and that old pal now has a family. It's very similar to a Clone Wars arc. But I really like this Soren character. Bokeem Woodbine's the actor that plays him, and he does a great job. And I think that his relationship with John is really cool. I really also like how we are establishing the hierarchy of power in the UNSC, and that's something that I talked about before, where I thought that the UNSC, we should really get more into them, and I like how we're going there with Lord Hood, so that's great. And overall, I would say that I really do, I'm having fun watching it. However, I don't know if I would watch this show if it wasn't Halo. And I don't know if the show would be as good if it wasn't Halo, because it, at times, as I said, it feels like a stereotypical science fiction show that we've seen before. And I'm waiting for them to start to add things that we haven't seen. I think near the end we were getting that, and we were getting to see what it's like with Master Chief and his quote-unquote struggle to be human. So that is something I want to get into. I want to see them, really reach into the psyche of the Spartans. But I think the last thing I will say is I cannot wait for Cortana to show up in this show. And I think once Cortana shows up, I think this series is going to start to really hit its stride, because Cortana is such a key element to Halo. She is almost as important as Master Chief himself. And I think that one of the things that's missing from the show right now is Cortana. And once they establish Cortana into the series, I think this show really will get going. So overall, I like this episode, but I do think that they can do a little bit of a better job on it with the future episodes. And I would still recommend it. Have you seen Halo? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.